Welcome to Nada Yada Island.
Next on Metro's Nada Yada Island podcast.
I almost fainted when the 4 new bomb shelves arrived. 4 free Samsung Galaxy A16 5G phones at Metro.
No way.
And finding out the 4th line is free? Oh, things got heated.
That's wild. Join Metro and get 4 free Samsung 5G phones. Only at Metro.
Plus tax. Bring 4 numbers and an ID and sign up for any Metro Flex plan. Not available currently at T-Mobile or been with Metro in the past 180 days.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Hello, and thank you for listening to The History of World War II podcast, episode 505, Catch Me, If You Can. Last time, with the town of Ishun being lost to the Germans so quickly, the Stavka removed Kuznetsov from overall command and replaced him with Admiral Lechenkov. And of course, the Stavka had only one order for the new commander: attack and keep attacking until the original defensive line was regained. And the admiral would attempt to do as ordered, but his Achilles heel was his lack of air cover. Still, needs must. The plan was to advance from the Chaluki River and head north to enemy-controlled Ishun with the recently arrived 25th and 95th Rifle Divisions, though much weakened from fighting in Odessa along with what remained of the 51st Army. No, Lechenko did not have an air arm to speak of, nor enough artillery, but he had a few T-34 tanks left, and they would have to do. On October 24th, the attack got underway. The first problem was that the Soviets would have to cover the 3 odd miles to get to Ishun, and parts of the German 73rd Infantry Division were just south of the city, shielding it. On the German side, the 73rd did lack men from all this fighting, but they still had a goodly amount of MG-34 machine gun teams and 8cm mortar squads, both very effective against human flesh. If that weren't enough, as the Russian troops advanced, the German bombers were well supplied and did not have to look around for enemy fighters. The Russians came on, but between the enemy's machine guns, their mortars, and their bombers, the would-be attackers took heavy losses from the get-go. Further, the German bombers managed to destroy one of the armored trains offering support, while damaging the other. Still, it has to be said, the Russians still tried to run this gauntlet, but failed. Ishun was never reached, and the Soviets retreated back to their starting point. The next day, October 25th, being a new day, was a chance to try again. But the results would be failure again, along with loss and breakdown of organization. Levchenko ordered the commander of the Coastal Army, General Ivan Petrov, to attack again, but as nothing on the ground had changed, the fighting went the same way as the day before. And then it got worse. In the middle of the day, it was clear to the Germans that it was only a matter of time before the attackers retreated again. And sensing this, the German 170th Infantry Division, still fresh, was sent in. The Soviet attack truly collapsed then. The Germans advanced 4 miles. The Soviet retreat became a rout. Levchenko and Bantov of the 51st Army put their heads together and decided to pull further back. Problem was, they did not tell Petrov. The following day, October 26th, seeing how the fighting was going, General Manstein, commander of the 11th Army, ordered the still fresh 132nd Infantry Division to join the fight, which completely overwhelmed the defenders, who were already overwhelmed. Order broke down, units started retreating without orders, which is saying something in Soviet Russia. Some locations were strong enough to hold out, well, at least for now. The 51st Army almost fell apart, though Petrov held them together. Still, they fell back, but together, versus a foot race between comrades, which was happening to other forces. Petrov fell back towards the town of Simferopol, think center of the bottom half of the peninsula. Yes, the way into Crimea was truly open, but it came at a cost. Manstein had suffered 7,286 casualties, of which 1,515 of them were dead or missing. This was atop the 12,000 casualties suffered during the battle at Perekop, and that alone was like losing a division. Not that the Soviets, again, were in any better shape. By now, the 51st Army and Coastal Army had lost about 25% of their number. Added to this were the 16,000 prisoners already taken by the Germans around Ishun. And this tale of woe only continued. The Soviet 51st Army had lost, or had taken from them, about 200 pieces of artillery, all kinds, while Petrov's army had lost 28,000 of its 80,000 troops, though his losses would have been worse if he had joined the fight sooner. Now that the way was open for the 11th Army, Manstein had planned on using the mobile SS division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler as his coup de grace, but that had been taken from him, so it was time to improvise. Big historical events are like investing goals. A little here, a little there, it adds up. Then something big happens. That's whatever your investing goals are. And that's Acorn's approach. Use your spare change to start investing for your future. And you can earn bonus investments just for buying what you need from brands you love. I've been using Acorns for the last 5 years, and I'm happy. I needed 5 minutes to set it up, and now my future is that much less stressful. After all, a new year is here, so use that as a marker to start something new for you. Again, I have a regular account, a retirement account, and something set up for my 2 youngest daughters. So, to sum up, Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money has a chance to grow for you, your kids, and your retirement. You do not need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns let you invest with the spare money you've got right now. You can start with $5 or even just your spare change. Again, I've been using this for 5 years and I'm happy, and I genuinely want you to give it a try. Head to acorns.com/WW2 or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/WW2. Designating this force Brigadier Ziegler to be under Oberst Heinz Ziegler, the Chief of Staff of the 42nd Army Corps, its job was to pursue the more cohesive Coastal Army. It was made up of the 22nd Reconnaissance Battalion under Oberst Lieutenant von Badian, the Assault Gun Division 190, 2 bicycle-mounted reconnaissance companies, a few motorized flak guns, and the Panzerjäger Abteilung 560. To make up for a lack of trucks, many which had been taken out by Soviet air attacks, the vehicles to be used came from the Romanians, specifically Romanian Colonel Randau Korn's 6th Motorized Regiment. Korn had impressed the Germans with his attention to detail and his aggressiveness. With this done, Manstein told Ziegler to get on Petrov's tail and stay there, giving him no time to set up a solid defensive line. Thus, this 2,000-man-strong force set out to the south. With that done, Manstein got to work, taking the rest of Crimea. The 22nd and 72nd Infantry Divisions, making up the 30th Army Corps, would clear the Savage coast and the northeastern side. The 50th and 132nd Infantry Divisions, making up the 54th Army Corps, would head for the coastal city of Yevpratoria, about midway down the west coast, then head for Sevastopol itself. No, this force was not strong enough on its own to take such a target, but they would begin the work. Meanwhile, the 46th, 73rd, and 170th Infantry Divisions, making up the 42nd Army Corps, would chase after the 51st Army and make for Feodosia, and then to Kerch on the far eastern coastal tip. On the Soviet side, Petrov, obviously needing to retreat, had to be clever and a bit daring, changing his retreat route often. Instead of heading due south to Simferopol, he and his would make their way to the southwest, to Yevpatoria, the same port city that the German 54th Army Corps was heading to. But at least here, the Black Sea Fleet may offer some assistance. With Petrov was the 25th, 95th, and 321st Rifle Divisions, or what was left of them. As there were two roads that went from where they were to where they were going, he split his force into two to put each of them on a road, and he used his 42nd Cavalry Division to act as a rear guard. He needed no more surprises. Like the Germans, Petrov was low on trucks, so at first tried a slow retreat on foot. Not helping in this, of his 4 remaining T-34s, only one of them was still fully operational, so it alone conducted delaying engagements, and at one point it was able to attack the leading German force following that just happened to get too close. The Germans halted after this, which gave Petrov more time to cover ground. Despite this, Ziegler was about to get into a place in between these two roads, as one went practically due south of Ishun to Simferopol, while the other went to the west coast to Yevpatoria. The further south one went, the further apart the two roads got. Using this increasing gap, Ziegler managed to get his force that was heading due south past the enemy on October 29th, and the next day it was on the outskirts of Simferopol along the more southern road. It had passed the retreating Soviets, and it had won the race. What this German/Romanian force found was that the city had already been abandoned by defending units. As for the damaged but still operational armored train that had already left Ishun and was here, the German bombers had harassed it all the way, and now that it was in this city's rail yard, she was put out of her misery. The second retreating force of Petrov's was also bypassed. Updates were being sent to Berlin, and it put out that their troops were on a victory march in the Crimea. While this had been going on, Bantov's very much weakened 51st Army was heading to the southeast of Ishun, towards Zankoy. The hope was to join up with the 276th Rifle Division there, watching the southern end of the Chongar Peninsula. Yet it was not to be. The German 30th and 42nd Army Corps caught up to them and simply smashed into the retreaters, capturing thousands of prisoners. Next, the German 46th Infantry Division easily made its way into this city on October 30th. Those Soviets still free ran for it to the south. As for their commander, Colonel Danlin, he and his staff were captured by the 170th Infantry Division around 11 a.m. that same day. Meanwhile, Vice Admiral Levchenkov at Sevastopol was trying to conduct his defense, but he could not reach Petrov or Bantov on the radio, and would only come to know too late that the cities he wanted them to take a stand in were already occupied.
I'm Dr. Samuel Hume, and I'm here to tell you about my new podcast, Winds of Change. Winds of Change is the story of how the sun set on the British Empire. This first season is on British India, and in these weekly episodes, we'll cover the whole history through to the final days of the Raj in 1947. If you love learning about the past and discovering why the world is the way it is, then listen to Winds of Change. You can listen to Winds of Change on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere you find great podcasts.
All, apparently, was lost, even before Levchenko's radios went silent, which is when Vice Admiral Oktyabrskij went back aboard his destroyer, Bonki, and sailed away to the east, to the port city of Pati in Georgia. This country had been in the Russian sphere since 1783 and was where Stalin was born. With him on his journey was a battleship and a heavy cruiser. Now, considering the almost superhuman rescue efforts as touching Odessa, very little was done by these ships to take away the Soviet forces at Yevpatoria along the west coast, but north of Sevastopol. Also, they did not hold up when they were sailing away at the cities along the south to maybe shell the Germans as they approached those cities. No, these three ships seemed to be in a race to leave the area and to make for the Caucasus region as fast as they could. Oktyabrski would be ordered back to Sevastopol 5 days later, but by then, the genie was out of the bottle. Back at Sevastopol, much like Odessa had done, there was a new organization formed. This one, the Sevastopol City Defense Committee, or KOS, led by Simferopol's Communist Party boss. Yes, he had abandoned his city, and his name was Boris A. Borisov. Either way, the KOS got to work, readying their resistance. As this was Soviet Russia, there were two more committees set up. One official, the other not so much, but it showed promise. The official committee was the Military Council of the Black Sea Fleet, but all that leader did was go around the city in his car and yell, "The port city is in a state of siege," as if everyone around him did not already know this. No, it was the latter informal committee that truly seemed prepared. The level-headed and stern of eye, 6-foot-tall Colonel Pavel Korpashenko, an instructor at the Black Sea Fleet's Mine Warfare School, formed his own ad hoc defense unit, incorporating his cadets. When he spoke, people listened, and he exhorted them to ready themselves. Soon he had several thousand armed sailors, come infantrymen, now designated the 1st Naval Infantry Regiment. Not stopping there, he had, 3 days later, 3 additional infantry battalions, designated 15, 16, and 17. Soon, there would be 2 more battalions, numbered, you guessed it, 18 and 19. As for artillery, the Major General Peter Morgunov, commander of all coastal batteries, readied his men and his guns. As their backs were to the water, they would fight until they could no longer fight. Fortunately, a cruiser arrived, and the 8th Naval Infantry Brigade disembarked. Sadly, they had not even started basic training, and they had no artillery, and they had very few automatic weapons. Still, they and others were sent to the north of Sevastopol, about 2 miles away, to set up along the Kacha River. Soon enough, the lead elements of Brigade Ziegler arrived, and the closest Soviet coastal battery commenced firing. A few dozen Germans or Romanians were killed, but the point remained. Without serious artillery or no air cover, everyone on both sides knew how this would go, which is why order broke down on the Soviet side. The rest transpired in rapid succession. The northern defensive line was cut off from Sevastopol on October 31st. Yevpatoria, the port city that was north of Sevastopol, was captured. The previously mentioned town, Simferopol, due south of Ishun and due east of Sevastopol, was abandoned and also captured. And when the Germans walked in, they found the T-34s. That one was still working. They just ran out of gas. Not that the NKVD did not do their job before leaving. And what was their job? Executing prisoners, mostly Tartars, and others with foreign heritage. Meanwhile, the remainder of the 51st Army, and remainder may be too strong of a word here, it was chased on its way to Kerch on the far eastern end by the 42nd Army Corps. As for the rest of the peninsula, it was the military equivalent of Pac-Man. German and Romanian units were pursuing Soviet retreaters, clearing the Savash. Some were on the road to Yalta, along the southern coast, further east, and some were approaching Sevastopol from the east directly. What helped the Russians barely, was that the Germans would have to stop and wait for water supplies, and they were being brought by horses. Now, Manstein had wanted to send a fast, powerful force at Sevastopol after the Battle of Ishun, but he did not have the means. He had to scrap things together just to create Brigade Ziegler. As for Petrov and his remaining 25th, 95th, and 172nd Rifle Divisions, because of the Germans, again, he had to take a circuitous route, but eventually they would end up in Sevastopol. Yet knowing that Levchenkov had lost all control, Petrov purposefully beat his forces to the city. Why? Because he was going to take over. And the Stavka backed this. Kind of. They told Petrov to take command, this was on November 3rd, that is, until Oktyabrskyi, the admiral, returned from his trip to the Georgian coast. But before anyone, Petrov, Oktyabrskyi, or the KOS committee could fight the oncoming Germans, they had to fight amongst themselves. For some believed, most believed, that Sevastopol could not be held, but Petrov thought it could, or at least it was worth fighting for. For if they did not, they would all soon die for it. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So I just want to say hello and welcome aboard to two members. Let's see here. Thomas Lee, a very nice gentleman. We had a correspondence. And Elizabeth Brown from Belden, Washington. Thank you both very much for supporting the show. I hope you enjoy the membership episodes. I'm trying to remember. It's been a couple of years. I've done some stuff on the Krupp family, the massive armaments German family. I've covered a lot of little stories, so there's a lot of story arcs in there, and I hope you enjoy them. I think we're up to 265 episodes, something like that, and I'm about to wrap up the Winter War. So anyways, as far as donations, I have to say, sadly, no joy, but you take what you can get. Anyway, so we're almost done with Crimea. I'm probably going to do a single episode on the siege of Sevastopol, the siege of Kerch on the East Coast, and then jump back probably to Army Group North with stuff with Leningrad. So again, Crimea has been lost pretty quickly. It was simply beyond their means to defend. They certainly didn't have enough artillery, and it turns out that their air arm was not up to snuff compared to the Germans. I mean, I could say something else, but would it be true? So we're almost finished here. Then we'll jump back north, and we'll go there back to Army Group Center, and we'll see how they and the Russians just literally bleed each other to death. And on that happy note, take care, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley Livesey from the History of the Second World War podcast. Join me on a journey through the most destructive conflict in human history, a journey that will take us not just through the famous campaigns and cataclysmic battles, but also to the lesser well-known corners of the war that touched millions all over the world, as we try and answer not just the questions of what and where, but how and why. You can find History of the Second World War on all major podcast platforms or at historyofthesecondworldwar.com.